He may never get to heaven. He may be the SH1T that many of you think he is. He may do nothing ever again in his life. But what Elon Musk did this week is of world historic importance. And you haven't even begun to hear the end of it. There is incontrovertible truth that the American presidential election was stolen. Not the one in 2016, the one in 2020, and not by the Russians, or the Chinese, or the Iranians, or the Venezuelans, or the North Koreans, but by Twitter. And it is a scandal of the ages. Some cynics say nothing will ever come of it because to a man and woman and indeterminate gender, every one of the liberal media elite is caught red-handed in the scandal and therefore will not breathe a word about it. But the Supreme Court of the United States may take a different view. That's the Supreme Court of the United States that we were told was stuffed full of Donald Trump's appointees. What am I talking about if you are just tuning in to this story? Elon Musk paid $44 billion for a $10 billion company called Twitter, on which I have spent a good deal of my time over the last couple of decades nearly. People have been purged off Twitter altogether. But what Elon Musk did by publishing Twitter files this week, in the last couple of days, was far more serious than that. It was evidence, clear and incontrovertible, that the 2020 presidential election was stolen for Joe Biden and the Democrats. Incontrovertible in that the emails and the internal messages and chats make absolutely abundantly clear that the company, before Musk took it over, was receiving orders from Democratic Party panjandrums to block people, to remove people, and most crucially, to describe the Hunter Biden laptop story as Russian disinformation, a false claim that was attested to by no less than 51 former senior security and intelligence officials of the American state. But it was not Russian disinformation. Every word on the laptop turned out to be true, as has, too late, been acknowledged by the very newspapers, like the New York Times, which first branded it as Russian disinformation in the first place. So if it was not Russian disinformation, the false allegation that it was American disinformation. And moreover, disinformation that was being spread at the behest of one of the two main candidates in the presidential election. And when you see what was on the laptop, you know exactly why. Because if the information on the laptop had been before the American voters, before Election Day 2020, Joe Biden would have lost. Without a scintilla of doubt, he would have lost. Not because his son is a vile, debased pervert, and all of that is attested to on the laptop, including pictures taken by his own hand of him in sexually compromised situations with crack pipes in his mouth, smoking crack cocaine and cavorting with young women, some of them too young to be cavorting with him. Not for that reason, because Joe Biden could have said, I have an errant son, don't visit the sins of the son on the father. He might have claimed that. but much more seriously on the laptop, was the information that Joe Biden, when vice president to Barack Obama, was up to his neck in financial corruption with foreign governments, principally the government of, you've guessed it, the Ukraine. That Joe Biden was the big guy who got a cut of the business being done in Ukraine by Hunter Biden, with no qualification other than that he was the son of the Vice President of the United States. I'm talking tens of millions of dollars. And there's the big guy seeded throughout the laptop's contents. And I'm saying here now, Joe Biden can sue me if he likes, that the big guy is him. We know that because we saw the big guy in action on the television, ordering the Ukrainian government to sack their chief prosecutor because he was investigating the malfeasance being indulged in by Burisma, an oil and gas company that was paying unaccountably Hunter Biden $100,000 a month for doing nothing. A crackhead, dishonorably kicked out of the US military, who never worked in oil and gas in his life, was getting $100,000 a month for not showing up at Burisma. And when the chief prosecutor bravely began investigating it, Joe Biden on television warned the Ukrainian government that in the dog days of the Obama administration, he would cost the Ukrainian government $1 billion in American aid unless this chief prosecutor was sacked. The evidence on the laptop was clear, incontrovertible, and would have cost Biden the election. That's why Twitter executives moved decisively into action. And it's all there in black and white. They decided falsely to brand this story as a Russian disinformation project and to expunge any reference to it in the entire 3 weeks before polling day in 2020. They shut down the Twitter account of the New York Post, a grand old newspaper, a legitimate part of the American journalistic landscape. They shut down their Twitter account because they had broken the story about Hunter Biden's laptop. Anyone who referred to it was suspended, shadow banned, blocked or banned. Every trace of the Hunter Biden laptop story was ruthlessly expunged by named Twitter executives, and they all a lie. Now, of course, Twitter is entitled to publish or not publish anything that it likes, but it is not entitled to conspire with officials of what was, in certain states like Arizona, about which more later, and would soon become, as a result of their activities, the government of the United States of America. That becomes a criminal offense against the First Amendment of the Constitution of the United States of America. It becomes a conspiracy to commit a criminal offense against the Constitution of the United States of America. It becomes, dear ladies and gentlemen, an act of treason against the United States. And whilst it's true that the BBC have not breathed a word of Twitter files, or Elongate, as I like to call it, because he's the man that's opened the gates so that we can now all see what the man buns with the man bags in San Francisco were doing in charge of what they laughingly called the public square. Whilst it's true that the BBC, the Guardian, and the New York Times, and the Washington Post have not yet breathed a word of this scandal, this matter will now move into the courts of the United States, and probably, first of all, in Arizona. Arizona, you may recall, was a knife-edge contest where the counting suddenly stopped for many hours in the middle of the night, and where, rather surprisingly, Donald Trump lost the election. Well, it turns out in the new revelations today in the Twittergate files that the high officials of the state of Arizona were literally hourly and certainly daily in touch with officials at Twitter to manipulate in a criminal way the circulation of truthful information, which materially affected the result, even if nothing else did. And nothing else is unlikely to be all that happened in the case of Arizona. We'll be talking to a freedom rider in the United States about that in just a few minutes.